Okay, I am going to go in and show how to make this dolphin out of the book. Okay, and you can use any 24 peg loom. Just make sure that you use the equivalent yarn to the loom, and I'm going to be using my 24 peg 3/16 loom, and I'm going to be making me a little mini dolphin. There might be some areas of the dolphin you want to adjust if you don't want the nose to be quite so fat. You can try to do a narrower nose, and instead of doing knit 8 for 20 rows, maybe knit 6 for 20 rows, and that'll narrow out the little nose area because you kind of get to the nose area pretty quickly. Okay, so we have our two colors. We have our underbelly color and we have our main color. And what it says to do is you're going to start out with your main color. Okay, and what you're going to do is it says to do to the body. You're going to do circular and you're going to do 24 pegs, and you're going to start with your main color, which it says blue. And if you're looking at the picture, you know what the blue is for. And what it says to do is to E-wrap cast on 24 pegs. Okay, so we're going to E-wrap cast on 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just going to keep going. Okay, we've done our E-wrap cast on. Then it says to go to row 1. And row 1 says to knit 2 and then to start a nose, in which it says knit 8 for 20 rows, bring original loops back on pegs 1 and 8. Knit 2 together, knit 6, and knit 2 together. Alright, because I don't like to do sewing, I'm going to show a method on how to keep you from having to sew. Alright, but it says the first thing you want to do is knit 2. So here is 1 and 2. Alright, now you're going to be working over 8 stitches. So you're going to put a stitch marker on peg 1 and 8. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're going to put one on there. Okay. Alright, now what we're going to do, if I'm not sewing, I need to divide that in half, where I'm going to do 10 rows knit, adding a stitch marker on every slip stitch, okay? Sorry, let me see if I can pull that up just a smidge. Alright, so I've got a stitch marker on the first and the 8th stitch. And it says to knit 8 for 20 rows. If you don't mind sewing up the nose later, go ahead and knit 8 for 20 rows. If you don't want to sew up, you'll do the method I'm fixing to show you. Alright. Okay. For every slip you do, you want to add a stitch marker. Okay, so we've just done one row, and this will be our second row. Alright, so here's our second row. Alright, and then we're going to pull that over and slip it and add a stitch marker. Alright, we've done 2 rows. Alright, and then this will be 3 rows. So you're going to knit your way over. I promise you that if you want to go through this technicality, it's well worth it. You don't have to sew so much. and you toss that over. And what you want to do is you want to go under that stitch marker right there. Okay, and that makes it easier to pull on later. And then you're going to slip that. Okay, so that makes for row 3, and then we're fixing to do row 4. So every time you slip a stitch, put a stitch marker on it. Okay, now here is row 4. Right. Now, when you toss that stitch marker over, when you go in, make sure that you take your working yarn instead of over but under. To slip, you want to go up under it. Okay. And what that does is it allows a little bit more room to pull the stitch back up. If you don't, then it tends to make it a little too tight. Okay. So that's row 4. So what you want to do is continue this process until you have a total of 10 rows that you've completed. Okay, so pause the video and get that much done, and then when we come back I'll show you the second half. Okay, so I didn't put a stitch marker on that last slip. The reason being is we're going to be adding the previous one back when we go to knit back. So here's my 10. Right now we're not going to be adding back, we're not going to be adding a stitch marker to every slip stitch. Now we're going to be trying to add stitch marker stitches back. So what you want to do is you want to try and find the closest stitch to the peg, which is this one. Okay, then you're going to pick that up and put it back on the peg like that. Okay, then you can take that off. Alright, and what you're going to do is you're going to slip that first stitch and you're going to knit your way over. And knit the 2 stitches together. Okay, then you're going to find the next closest stitch marker to the peg, which is this one here. You're going to lift it up and pull it back over. Okay, then you're going to slip that first stitch over here and knit your way over. And by adding these slowly back, you're closing up the hole that would be there. Right? And it really does make a nice difference on that. Okay. Next, you're going to find the next closest stitch, which is this one here, to the peg. Okay. So the next closest stitch is there to the peg. And you're going to pick it up and pull it back onto the end stitch. Okay. And you're going to slip that first stitch and you're going to knit your way over. Knit the 2 together. Okay, then you're going to go in and try to find the next closest stitch marker to the peg, which is that one there, and put it on. So you're going to continue this process until you have the last 2 stitch markers left. Alright, and what that's going to do is if you're just knitting the 20 rows, you're going to sew it up later. That's where you want to chime in, is when we're on those original stitches, bring the original loops back. We're going to come back, yes, when you want to come back and chime back in if you're just doing the 20 rows, okay? Let's go ahead and pause the video, and if you're doing this method, finish it up, and then we'll come back and finish up the nose. Okay, so I have my working yarn pulled over here, and as you can see, I'm down to my 2 original stitches, and if you push down in there, you can see there's no gap. Okay, that's if you did it the method I just showed. Okay, so what you want to do now is you want to pull those original stitches back up and onto the pegs. Okay. The reason why you want to do it this way is because you're going to want to stuff that nose just a little bit, right? Okay. So the next thing you want to do is you want to knit 2 stitches together and then knit the ones in between. Knit 2 stitches together. Okay. What you should have is a nice little nose here. Okay. And stick your little finger in. You can see there's no holes. Alright. Okay. So now that we finished that, it says to knit 14, which means you're just knitting your way back to the beginning of the row is all that you're doing. Okay. Alright. Okay, so we've knitted our way back, and then it's going to go from row 2 through 26, which is the same thing, but you're doing a color chunking technique, okay? So at this point, what you want to do is you want to get your white yarn, and you want to attach it. So you're just going to go in and do a couple of half knots to attach it, because we're not doing like a complete color change. What we're doing is actually a half and half. And so what it says to do is to change to the white color, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to knit 12 in the white, okay, because that's what it says. And when you work this along, you may think that you have it in the wrong spot, the white, but you don't. You want the white to be on the underside of the nose, and the reason being is to get that indentation at the top of the head, you want there to be more puff, which is why the gray is going to be on this side. Okay. So let me make sure I have 12 there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Then it says you're going to knit 12 in gray. So you're going to come back around and you're going to knit over for 12 until you meet up with your white. And that's going to count as row 1, okay? And you're going to do what I call color chunking, and you're going to do that for a total of 24 rows, okay? I'm going to show you how that works. It's not as difficult as you might would think to do color chunking, all right? So you need to decide which color is going to go up and over one yarn side or the other. And typically I like my white but we'll do gray, goes up under that white and over, all right? And you're going to knit your white. Okay, so you're going to knit over. And I'm going to show you the technique that keeps it from twisting, but even if it occasionally twists because you forget to do a step, it's not that difficult to do a couple of untwists with the loom, okay? So you're going to knit your way over, and this is going to be row 2. Alright, but then as you're going to shove your loops down as you come back the direction you came. Then you're going to pick up that gray, and you're going to knit your way over on that side. And this will complete 2 rows. Now remember, our gray went under and over, okay? So, how you know you've completed 2 rows, you've gone around and back and you meet back at your starting point, okay? So, remember, it goes up under the white and over, okay? Like that. And you do your white first because the pattern says to do knit 12 in white and then switch and knit 12 in gray. Okay, so I'm going to be working on my 3rd row. Alright. And knit my way over. And you're going to continue this technique that I'm showing you, this color chunking as I call it, for a total of 24 rows, okay? So you're going to pick up your gray. And what this twisting does is it keeps it all nicely attached, but you don't have a jumbled mess up under the actual animal. And it works great for other projects as well. Okay. So you're going to knit your way over. Alright. This completes row 3. And remember, the gray goes up under the white and over. Okay. And then I'm going to knit my white first. Okay. And this is going to be working on row 4. Okay. So you complete this, you'll have completed 4 rows. And then you'll just need to pause the video and do 20 more, okay? And then we'll be coming back and starting to work the narrowing of the tail, right? So as I push my stitches down, I go back the direction I came, and I pick up my gray, and I work my way around, okay? So that is how you do color chunking, and you're going to do that for a total of 20 more rows. Already done 4 rows here. Just go ahead and pause the video and complete your total 24 rows, and then when we come back, we'll be ready to start decreasing on the back end of the dolphin. Okay, I have completed my 24 rows of the half and half, and you can see your opening here for your head. What you'll eventually want to do is probably tighten that cast on, and then when you go to sew it and stuff it and that kind of thing is when you'll do its shaping. Okay, so at this rate we are on row 27, and this is where it kind of gets complicated, and it's where you're probably going to need to make a little ball of extra white for the other side, because you're going to be splitting up our white in the middle to decrease down. Now if you don't want all this complication, you could just make the dolphin gray, okay, or blue, or whatever color you want to do it in, okay? So you don't have to do these color changes, but it adds to a little extra appearance. Okay, so I'm going to do my twist again. Okay, and what it says to do is to knit 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so at this point, it says to start working flat in the other direction. So you're going to knit 6, change to blue, and then knit 12, change to white, and knit 6. So you're going to knit the other direction, so knit 6, pick up the gray or the blue, depending on what color yours is, and then you're going to knit over 12. So you'll know your 12 because it's all gray. Then here's where you're going to want to add your other white, and you're going to work your white in 2 different sections, and I'll show you how to do that so that it's not that big of a thing. It's not a very big section, so you wouldn't need a whole lot of yarn, alright? Because we're talking total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 rows of doing that, so you don't need much white. Right now I am pulling from the center, but I can pull from the outside. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be pulling from the outside to get myself enough for 6 rows. Okay, and once I do that, then I'll just cut the yarn. I won't need much. I really won't. Okay. And to gauge depends on what size you're using. You may need a hell of a lot more than what you got there. Okay, so I'm going to place that back. Alright. And then I'm going to attach the white. Now I pulled like 3 yards probably off, but I mean that's all I'd need for something that's small. I probably won't even use that much. So you just kind of gauge, and you're going to use less and less because you're decreasing along the same lines too. So you're going to go in and pull that down and tie it off with a couple of half knots. Alright, next things up. You can work your half knot tail in so that you don't see it so much, or you can stuff it into the middle. But it says to knit 6, okay? For some reason, this is really don't. Alright. Usually once you get one down, you can get the rest of them down. So here's 2. And 3. And 4. 5. 6. Okay. Now, we are on row 28. And what you're going to do is you're going to keep in mind with how I do this process. Okay, what it says to do is it says to decrease. Alright, so you're going to lift that up, that end stitch, and you're going to decrease. And then you're going to knit those 2 stitches together. Okay? Then it says to knit 4. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it says to change color again. So you're going to twist. And then you're going to knit your 12. Okay. Okay, then you're going to find the one that's on the side, and you're going to twist again and knit your 4, okay, and then you're going to decrease. Alright, so you're going to pick that up and move that over, and then you're going to knit the 2 stitches together. You're going to continue this decreasing, alright, where you're just decreasing at the end, so you can do it first and then just kind of knit your row if you choose to. So you can go ahead and move your ones over, because row 29 I think it is, yeah, row 29 is another decrease. Short splits, not long. Alright, so you're going to go ahead and decrease your ends, and that way you don't have to worry about it. You can just flow right on through. Okay, so now you're just going to knit the 2 stitches together and then knit over, which is knit 3. Then cross and knit your 12. This is the most complicated section because you have this split on your white, but if it's not a very big section, you can always tolerate that complication. You can change it up to completely gray if you want, but I mean, I think that would change its appearance probably a little too much. Okay, then you're going to find the white that you're using, and you're going to knit your 3, and then knit 2 together. Alright, then you're on row 30, okay, and then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to decrease the end, okay, and there's a point where you run out of white on your decreasing and you end up working with just blue, which is nice. You just tie off your white and continue working with the blue or gray, depending on what it is. So you're going to continue this process of decreasing down until you are to your blue, okay? And that decreasing continues all the way to row 35, and it's where you do your last decrease. You're going to knit 6, and you're going to decrease again, and you should have a total of 8 stitches, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to continue this decrease, and when it shows white, fine. But when it changes over to that other color, that's when you tie off your white and start working with the gray, okay, when you change it over. So go ahead and pause the video and keep decreasing down until you're down to 8 stitches, and you should be down into your main color, which is gray for this video. It was blue for the book, okay? So go ahead and pause the video and complete that much, and when we come back, we'll start working the tail. Okay, I've gotten down to my 8 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So 4, 4. All right. Now what you want to do is you want to knit for 6 rows. Okay. So all you want to do is you just want to knit back and forth for 6 rows. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video and complete your 6 rows, and then we'll come back and we'll start working on the tail fin. And you're going to want some stitch markers because you're going to be bringing row 41, your last row, you're going to be bringing those stitches back on before you bind off, okay? Let's go ahead and pause the video and knit back and forth for 6 rows. When we come back, we'll be ready to start the fin. Okay, so we're to row 42, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to put some stitch markers onto your 8 stitches. Okay, and what that's going to do is make it easier to see these stitches when you need to bring it back to bind off later. Okay. It says to bring the 8 stitches back from row 41, and I tell you how to see row 41, but if you go ahead and you just mark all the stitches for row 41, then you don't have to see or figure out where row 41 is. You can just pull it back. Okay, now we're ready to go. Okay, so now we're on to row 42. Okay, and what it says to do is it says to knit an increase 2. And I'll show you what that means. Okay, so we're going to knit our 8. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright, so now what it says to do is increase 2, and that means you're just going to E-wrap and E-wrap. Okay, then it says you're going to knit 10. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then it says to increase 2. So 1, 2. Okay. And then you knit 12 and then increase 2, and knit 14 and increase 2, and knit 16 and increase 2, and knit 18 and increase 2, and then we are from rows 48 to 53. But what you're trying to do is get back to 20 stitches. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and pause the video and continue this process of increasing until you have your 20 stitches. Okay, so you want to keep up with that. Alright, so you knit your way over, and then to increase 2, you just wrap and wrap. Okay, and then you knit your way over. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video and continue this process of knitting over and increasing 2 on the end. And when we come back, you should be on row 47, row 48 through 53. And I'll explain that. And then we are working our way down. So we don't have much more to go on the body before we'll be done, okay? So go ahead and pause the video, continue your increasing. When we come back, we'll be ready to do rows 48 through 53. Okay, so I have completed my increases, as you can see, and so I've just done my last 2 increases. Next, what it says is to knit rows 48 through 53, which is 6 rows. So what you're going to do is you're going to knit back and forth for 6 rows, okay? So go ahead and pause the video and knit back and forth for 6 rows, and then when we come back, we'll be ready to start row 54. Okay, I have completed my 6 rows, and you can kind of see what your body is looking like. I know it's a little weird until you add its shaping to it. Okay, what you want to do is it says to decrease, knit 2 together, knit 16, decrease. So what you're doing is you're decreasing over, and you're decreasing over here. You're decreasing on the ends. Okay. So you're just going to move those stitches over. And it's easy to go ahead and do it at the beginning of the row. That way you don't have to worry about missing the one at the end. Okay? So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be decreasing on the ends for every row until you're back down to your 8 stitches again. Okay? So I'll show you 2 rows and then I'm going to let you pause the video and get your next section done. Okay? Okay. And it says to decrease, knit 2 together, knit 14, and then decrease, knit 2 together. Okay. So basically you're decreasing on the ends. Okay, you're just going to decrease on the ends. Okay. And then you're just going to knit your way around. Okay. And so what you want to do is you want to pause the video and continue this decreasing until you have gotten yourself back down to 8 stitches. So you're going to keep decreasing on the ends until you're back down to 8 stitches. So pause the video and get that much done, and then we'll come back and finish up the body. Okay, so we finished our decreasing, and then it says you need to knit rows 60 through 63, and that's basically 4 rows. And so you want to knit for 4 rows, and then we'll be ready to come back and finish up the tail. So we are very close to completing all this. So go ahead and pause the video, knit 4 rows, and then we will be ready to finish up. Okay, so as you can see, you have your increased out section, the short 6 rows, and then the decreased section. So what it says to do is to bring back the 8 stitches, and what you're going to do is you're just going to shove those back up. Okay. And you're going to bring back the 8 stitches from rows 41. You will know this as it is the narrow section before the increase. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea if you didn't do this method, but I personally find doing this method makes it so much easier. So you want to find your end and you want to place it on that end stitch there. Okay, then you're going to take the next one. Make sure you line them all up perfectly. Okay, so you're just going to go in, you're going to put all those stitches back, and I find this is the easiest way to do it. Okay, you don't have to think about it, you don't have to fuss with it, you know exactly which stitch you're bringing back. Try not to have the stitches twisted, and you know they're twisted if they're hard to get onto the actual loom. Okay, there you go. Now you can take all those 8 stitches off, and then it says once you've done that, then you can bind off. And binding off is no different than you do normally. Okay, you're just going to knit the 2 stitches together when you go in and bind off. Okay, alright, here's how this goes. You're going to knit 2 stitches to get yourself started. So there's the first one. There's the second one. Take that second stitch back to the first peg, toss the bottom loop over. Then move that stitch over. Knit the next peg, toss both the stitches over, move it back, toss the bottom loop over, and move it over one. Knit the next one, take it back one, toss the bottom loop over, move it over one. Knit the two together. So this bind off isn't that bad. Once you bind off, you'll be ready to start trying to sew things up and that kind of thing. There's a lot of little prep stuff in here, and you will want to do your fins, which is the same as the whale. I'll show you how to do it on here. Okay, okay, and you take some scissors and you're going to cut off a pretty good tail so that you can sew up things. And you're going to pull that through and pull it out. Okay. There is your tail. You'll definitely want to sew that tail up on both sides because it's going to want to curl in because you knitted everything. So my suggestion is you sew up, send the needle down, and then sew up. Okay. So you got to sew that up. Then the next thing you got to do is to be able to sew that up. Okay. You have 2 options. You can hold off. You can sew most of that up. So at least halfway so you have some stuffing room. But you may want to close up the head first. And my suggestion is you might want to tighten the cast on. So let me explain how that works. You're going to pull the yarn and it's going to tell you that that is your last stitch you want to touch, which means you'll have a gap and then you'll have the stitch you should be messing with, okay? And so what you're going to do is you're going to go in and just tighten the stitches all the way around, okay? And this will make it a little easier when you go to actually gather. You could do a drawstring bind off, but the reason why I chose not to go that method was this, is that you might get go too tight, and this kind of allows you more of an option to get it just right. Okay, so all it's doing is lining those stitches up like it should. Alright, if you need assistance on how to sew up the tail, you can follow the whale. It's done exactly the same way. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, sew up your tail, tighten your cast on. Alright, and again, if you want to be able to stuff this and leave the back to stuff, then I suggest you only sew halfway up. Okay. I'll show you how to sew up the head area so that it makes more sense, and it doesn't take as much as you might think. So I'm going to go ahead and finish tightening up this, and then I'll show you how to sew the head up. Okay, so at this point, you're going to want to make sure. Okay, you're going to want to sew it up. Okay, and I'm going to use the tail I just made to sew it up. It's not much of a tail to use, but you can use it. Okay, so what you want to do is send that through, then you're going to send it through too. Okay, and you're going to send it through there, and then you're going to send it through too. And then send it through, and then send it through too. This is just my method, but basically you're kind of trying to go in and do like a little gather and sewing it up. Okay. Alright. And when you get to a certain point, you can go in and tighten that seam up. Okay. Okay. Then you just go in and tighten that up. What you'll notice that does is it gives that indentation that you want. Now, if you would like a thinner nose, you can make a thinner nose. You can do 6 instead of 8. That is fine. That'll work if you want a thinner nose. Okay. I translated this from my 12 peg loom. This is just how it worked when you double it. Okay. So I'm going to knot this off, and then I'm going to send it through the middle. Okay. Alright, there it is. Alright. So here is what you want to do. You want to go in and take your long tail here, and you want to sew that up. And what I do is send the needle down gently, move it over, sew up, send the needle back through, and then what you want to do is fold this, and you'll probably want to sew it only about halfway up, leaving yourself enough room to stuff. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and sew up your tail and sew halfway up. And if you want to go ahead and stuff, that's fine. You can go ahead and stuff. And when we come back, I'll show you how to start knitting the fins, and also how to finish up adding the eye area, the blowhole, and that kind of thing. Okay, so we are actually almost done. You can start to see the dolphin showing up now, particularly if you fold that up. Okay, so pause the video and get that much done, and when we come back, you can go ahead and stuff the body, and we'll finish sewing that up, and then we'll be ready to do our fins, our side fins, and that kind of thing. Okay, so what you'll see is that I sewed up the bottom here. Okay, And I'm pulling that a little bit more to give more of a curvature. And while you see that I've sewn on and I've made an extra fin, I'm going to show you how to make the fin. Okay, so don't freak out. I just kind of already sewn that together. And I did my sewing up tail and I've sent it through here where an eyeball should be. Okay, so that's the reason why that's sticking out there. Alright, so let's show you how to go in and make the fin. Okay, and it's not that difficult. If you've watched the whale, it's the same thing. Okay, so you're going to erect cast on 8. So here's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Push those down. Then you're going to knit for 6 rows. So this is going to be row 1. So here's row 1. Okay, so back and forth for 6 rows. Alright, let's go ahead and pause video and complete your 6 rows back and forth. Okay. And then when we come back, we'll move to the next section. Okay, which will be row 7 and 8. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video, complete 6 rows, and then we'll come back and do the next 2 rows. Okay, I've completed my 6 rows. So rows 7 and 8 are knit 6. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then you're going to go back and knit 6 the other direction. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then for rows 9 and 10, you're going to knit 4. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4. Knit back 4. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4. Then for rows 11 and 12, it's knit 2, and knit 2, then for rows 13 and 14, you're going to knit 4. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then come back and knit 4. One, 2, 3, and 4. Then on rows 15 and 16, it says to knit 6. So here we go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then knit 6 back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then for rows 17 through 22, which is 6 rows, you're going to knit for 6 rows. Okay, so here's row 1 on all 8 stitches. All right. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and knit 6 rows over your 8 stitches, and when we come back we'll be ready to bind off. Okay, so pause the video and get that much done, and then we'll be ready to bind off. Okay, so at this point you're wanting to just do a regular kind of bind off. So you're going to start off knitting 2, then you're going to take that second stitch back 1, and then you're going to toss the bottom loop over, and then you're going to move that back. Then you're going to knit the second stitch again, take it back 1, toss the bottom loop over, and move it over 1. Okay, move the second stitch, take it back 1, toss bottom loop over. You're going to do this with all the stitches, okay? And then we're going to be sewing this up, and you're going to want to make 3 of these. So the top fin and the side fins. Okay, you want to cut kind of a long tail so that you have enough to sew up all around the edges, and then sew it onto the actual body. Okay, so this is what it should look like. Okay, alright, so what I personally like to do, you don't have to do this, I kind of like to tighten up this edge. It makes when you sew it up a little easier. Your cast on. That's the reason why I still like to do the E-wrap cast on. I've done a lot of different other cast ons. I still like to do the E-wrap and then tighten it personally. Let's see. A lot of times it's always fun to find that last one. Okay, you don't have to do that. You could just sew it up. Okay, you're going to fold that in half. Right. Then you're going to thread this needle and sew up the whole fin. And again, you're going to do this 3 total times, okay? So you fold it in half, and this is how I personally do it, so I ain't having to do a whole lot of cutting. I'm going to send it through and do that short side, okay? So I'm going to send it through and do the short side. Then I'm going to send it back down through the top and then to the bottom. Okay, I'm not going to pull it super tight, okay? Then I'm going to shove this tail, my cast on tail, in there as much as possible. Then I'm just going to go in and sew up the bottom. And then I'm going to sew it this side, just because it'll make it easier when I go to actually sew it onto the body. And my sides together. Alright. Get that as far to the end as possible. Okay. So there is your little fin. Okay. So what you want to do is, this is all eyeing it, I guess. It's trying to find where you're a little above your center point here. It's trying to eyeball it. But short side, back, long side, and I like to sew it on the white and gray meet-up seam. Okay, so what I need to gather is where exactly. I have to line it up. Let me see if I can pull that up a little bit. Okay, so I have to sit there and gauge where exactly my line-up point is, and you should be able to get your needle to line that up. Okay. Might be a little full. Let's take it back one and see what that gets me. That looks like it. Okay. So once you get that lined up, then what you want to do is send it through and then send it through the connection. Okay. And then sew it out. Okay, I'm going to take it back down. Background has an awful lot of distraction, which makes it blurry. Okay. So I'm going to send that through and then send it through the white and the gray section. I'm going to do that all the way down. Okay. That does look even. And you try to get it to the very edge so that you don't have any slack going on. Okay. That's easy to have happen. Okay. So there you have it. Alright. At this point I'm going to tie it off. Do a wrap down to do a knot. And then just send it through the body. I normally do. Send it through, and then cut it off, and then pull and guide it. Okay, so there you have that, and now you need to add the top fin. And you'll just want to kind of line it up with the others, I think. Top, center, and you want to take it back a notch so that you have room to add blowhole. Alright, so you got to keep that in mind. You want to add a blowhole to the top, or at least an indentation for it. Okay, so this is a reason why you want to make 3, so you want to sew it on the same as you did the first side and that kind of thing. And then you want to find where the center is and then back slightly. So I think it's going to be in here. My blowhole can be here. If I think that's not far enough back, I can take it back some so that my blowhole is here. I just need to remember I need to be able to add a blowhole. Okay. So once you do that, you want to follow the column that you attach to, and that keeps it in a nice, even distribution of the seams, and it just keeps it even in general. Okay. can see that going. Okay. Now what you can do is go ahead and tie it off and send it through. Okay. Although that looks like the front needs tacking down a little bit more. Let's see that. Okay. I'm going to cut that out. Alrighty. So you can see there's your dolphin. Alright, now what I want to do is cinch my eye area, and I am probably going to paint in my eyes on this one because it's so small. But keep in mind, if you're wanting to add eyes first, if you're doing safety eyes, you can see I've kind of lined it up more with that white on that line, or the white and the gray and join, just the little column that is lining it up. Okay, and then you'll want to make sure that you're lining it up right where it is even. Okay, now here's what you want to do. You want to pull it kind of snug, okay, which creates an indentation, and that's the kind of goal that you want. And then you're going to send it back through. You may want to do this a couple of times to really get your indentation nice. Alright, so you can see you have your indentation for the eyes, and then what you want to do is you want to do a blowhole. So what I like to do is somewhere in between the eyes, add a blowhole section, and I'm going to send that back through here. Okay. Alright. Once you send that back through here, then you can kind of cut it. At this point, you have your dolphin. Okay, that's how you make it. You can add rhinestone eyes if you like. I'm going to paint mine in, but that is how you make your dolphin. Okay, that's it.